Welcome, dear friends, members of this beloved congregation. We gather here today with heavy hearts and also profound gratitude to celebrate and honor the remarkable life of our dear Phyllis Gonigan. In this sacred space, we come together as a community, bound by love, united in our grief, and forever touched by the light that Phyllis brought into our lives. As we prepare to embark on this journey of remembrance, let us take a moment to ground ourselves in the present. Fully awake to the significance of this gathering, let us acknowledge the weight of our loss, but also the immeasurable gift of having known and loved Phyllis. Her presence in our lives, her unwavering dedication to this community, her boundless love for each and every one of us has left an indelible mark on our hearts. In the coming moments, we'll light a candle of remembrance, a chalice. The chalice is the sacred symbol of our faith. And perhaps today we will also use it as a gesture that represents the eternal flame of Phyllis's spirit that will live on in us. As we do so, let us reflect on the warmth and radiance she brought to our congregation and to all of those who were fortunate enough to cross her path. Let us open our hearts to the memories we share, the stories we will tell today, and the love that will forever bind us together. Let us find solace in the knowledge that Phyllis's legacy will live on through the countless lives that she touched as she made our community her home. So let us take a deep breath together, grounded in this moment, filled with gratitude for the beautiful soul that was Phyllis Gonigan.
In this time of loss, in this time of asking why, we light a flame of sharing. We light a flame of commitment. In this time of why, we light this flame, sign of our searching, sign of our sharing, sign that together we remember. Together we ask why. Together in sadness and joy, we share light. Together, we celebrate what we are together.
The words of our covenant are found on the back inside cover of the gray hymnal. Many of you have them imprinted on your heart. Please join me in saying them now. Love is the teaching of this church, and the quest for truth its daily task, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life and community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all.
I'd like to take just a moment to talk about our music today. Mimi and team have chosen music that Phyllis loved. And I don't know if you know, but Phyllis played a very good violin. That's why our guest Glenn is here to do that. And some of the recordings we played were favorite ones of Phyllis's of the violin in orchestras. And the hymns were hers, and also the anthems that we'll be singing today. So, in honor of Phyllis.
loving, inclusive, and determined. Story after story about Phyllis that would come in to me, and then my own experience with her, just they all seem to resonate with those loving, inclusive, and determined. And from the moment I met Phyllis and Mimi, I met you both at the same time. I was here at candidating week, and they met me right in the middle of the aisle, and they sort of grabbed me after the first sermon. And it was one of the warmest welcomes I felt that day. Now, your welcomes were also very lovely, but they made me, Phyllis and Mimi both, made me feel incredibly comfortable in what is otherwise, it was a little bit stressful that day, right? And to me, that was the moment when I started to see how much she valued inclusivity and caring and nurturing. It's a quality that we all loved, I think, and will deeply miss. And you could see it in other areas, right? She taught herself how to sign our covenant so that people wouldn't feel left out. The guiding teaching of our church, she wanted that to be shared with everyone. She radiated with a curiosity and a desire to connect with people. She learned Hungarian so that she could read the letters that were mailed to us from the recipients of our scholarships, Transylvania. And she wanted to communicate with Reverend Tiva. She would do these things as a way to let somebody know that she saw them and she valued them. It's really a beautiful trait and quality. Music, of course, was one of Phyllis's greatest passions. As was said, she was formally trained violin and viola and conducting, but she also had the type of ear that, what did you guys call her as a kid? The tape recorder? The tape recorder. Because she would hear these songs on the radio, and when she would sing them back, if the singer was flat. She would sing it back flat because her ear was so, like she was in the moment with the people that she was trying to be with. And her love for music was perhaps matched only by her dedication and love for this church. She loved this place. She loved you people. She shared our vision. Even after the accident on November 5th, Phyllis would tune into the services live, not later. She would listen live so that she could be with us in spirit. And I would get I would come off the pulpit and I would go check my email, and there'd be an email waiting for me with thoughts. And they're, due to her nature, they're often very encouraging, like, "Oh, that was really good," but not in that nice way, right? It was in a way that was really insightful and attentive, and she was genuinely engaging with us. She was truly here in spirit if she couldn't be with us in person. And as many of you know, Phyllis was an avid runner. She started it up when her brother Peter started a fundraiser for the college she was working at, and she just took that on as a challenge, right? Most of us would be like, "Oh, a 5K, that's great, I can do that." And Phyllis was like, "Okay, marathons." And there's something behind that signature smile, right? That was also determination and resilience, where she was always pushing herself to find new limits, running marathons, but also new limits in how she would welcome people and new limits in how she would celebrate the arts and love. During my visits with Phyllis after the accident, despite the difficulties that she was facing, she had a very difficult. Those of you who visited, there were two of them in the room, and the other person would listen to these soap operas at a very high level, which would have made me struggle. And I think I heard her say something about it once. Like, oh, it's loud. But she always steered our conversations towards the progress that she was making, right? The steps that she was taking to overcome the challenges that she was having, and how much she couldn't wait to come back and join us. And it was so exciting. I hope I'm not stealing one of your stories. But it was so exciting that, they released her, right, to come. She had to go stay there, but she was allowed to come out and visit us. And she came in, and you were singing some anthems, and she hadn't made rehearsal, but she was like, I know these anthems. And she just hopped right in so that she could be part of what we were doing and part of what we were trying to say with the world. She loved to be here. She was loving and inclusive and determined. And as we bid her farewell, perhaps we can take a little bit of this with us. Let these values inspire us to strive to emulate her kindness and her resilience and her zest for life. Rest in power, Phyllis. I will miss you. We will miss you. Please join in singing congregational hymn number 123, Spirit of Life, 123.
Like to stand?
Okay. Obviously, I'm Mimi Gonigam Stevens, and obviously I'm Phyllis's sister, and I share one of the qualities that Ian has just been extolling, determination. Oh, I have so many stories about Phyllis. I was 7 when she was born, and it was only a few months later that she ended up being rushed to a doctor's office from my grandparents' cottage at Lake George to be operated on with an emergency tracheostomy, and then immediately shipped off to a hospital in Albany, New York. My mother's parents actually lived in Schenectady, which was nearby, and during all the time that Phyllis was in the hospital in Albany, my mother was there. So that my brother and I, he 5 and I 7, were subjected to a single father. So we were very glad when Phyllis finally got out of the hospital and Mom could come home. But for Phyllis to get out of the hospital, she had a tube, a breathing tube in her throat. And they finally decided, hey, she can breathe on her own, and we'll go and remove that tube. So doctors and nurses and everybody came in, and there was Phyllis in the crib. She pulled out the tube herself. She decided she could breathe. So that's my first Phyllis story. The next one is a little more solemn. Phyllis was not a Unitarian when she moved here. And I said, I can help you find, if you want to go to a Presbyterian church again, if you want to go to a congregational church, which is the church we were raised in. Our father was a minister. We'll find a way. Linda Olson Peebles was here at the time, and her father was a congregational minister, and her parents offered to pick Phyllis up and take her to church if she wanted to go to his church. But she said, no, she'd stay with me. So she came here. I received a message from somebody reminding me of this in one of the sympathy cards I got. And I can't quote it exactly because I don't have it written down in front of me, but basically it was that she had this memory of Phyllis when Saddam Hussein was in prison after he was captured, and he was having health problems. And she was very concerned that he should be getting the health care that he needed, because he had done some horrible, horrible things, but he was still entitled to be regarded with having human in health and dignity, as our first principle states. And she was very concerned about his health. And the person who wrote this note said, it is really amazing to find somebody who not only doesn't just give lip service to their religion, but lives it, internalizes it, and makes it part of their personality. And that was another story about Phyllis. And, I'm trying to think of anything else, but that's basically, she had determination, she did. She, of course, anyone who knew Phyllis knew how much she loved cats. they may not know that Phyllis in her lifetime had ever had 2 paying jobs. One of them was as a member of a string ensemble that got paid for playing at parties and things like that. And the other one was babysitting a new puppy because both of the parents went to work, and one of them was an airline pilot and was sometimes gone for weeks at a time, and she would have to so Dale called up and said, "Do you think Phyllis would like a puppy sitting job?" And so Phyllis, in spite of the fact that it wasn't a cat, went and befriended Rascal, took him for walks, fed him, cleaned up after him, and that was her employment. And that she made sure that he got his good walks, regardless of the weather. And if he messed on the floor, Dale always came home to a cleaned floor. So those are just some little examples of Phyllis. I miss her. I constantly scream big sisterly, "Why didn't you tell me about this so I would know what to do now that you're gone?" But that's the way it goes. And she was a wonderful, wonderful sister, and I wish I thought I could live up to her example. Thank you. Oh, I have to say, the next piece of music that you will be hearing is, that was the last Phyllis story I had. The next piece of music you will be hearing is what Phyllis, after having played it at a memorial service, or even before, referred to as the all choked up farewell.
going to have to start with what I hope is a little bit of an icebreaker, because as I believe a large percentage of people are, I am close to terrified of public speaking in front of a group of people. No. Before I retired, the team that I worked with would probably laugh at that, because I was very outspoken in our meetings, but to be on a stage with a microphone is uncomfortable for me, so just put that out there. But when I was asked to present some memories of Phyllis, it seemed like just such a daunting task, because there are so many. And as anyone of you that know, I'm sure you can understand what I'm saying. But I chose one that it's a little silly, but I chose this because it is something that is ongoing with my family. So Mimi and Phyllis had come to visit. I live in Utah, which is where my mom's from. And they had come out, and one of the things that we liked to do when they came to visit was to go up in the mountains to a place called Causey Reservoir. It was a place that was very important to all of us in many ways. When I was a child, we spent a lot of time there camping, hiking, canoeing, and just enjoying the outdoors. And when my mother's only other child was tragically killed in an auto accident many years ago, that is where we laid him to rest, spread his ashes there. So we had just gone there to hang out, enjoy the weather, and have our memories. And Phyllis had gone out to do a little paddling. And when she came back to shore, where my mother, myself, and my husband were just hanging out, visiting, she could not get out of the kayak. And this went on for quite some time. She struggled. And I believe that at some point, all of us went over and tried to help her, unsuccessfully. And it was Phyllis, so we'll get there. And finally got to a point where, and she was so frustrated. And she just said, "It's hopeless." And my mother, I hope this does not seem inappropriate, but it is integral to the story, said, "Well, I guess you're just gonna have to sit there until you die." And we all cracked up, including Phyllis. And maybe those were the magic words, but she did manage to get herself out of the kayak, and we had a good laugh. And there's so many situations that this fits into that I can't even think of one at the moment, but just in daily life with my husband and a friend of mine, remembering this story, that's just what we say. When something gets to a certain point, we just say, "Oh, it's hopeless." And we laugh, and we remember Phyllis.
Good afternoon. My name is Katie Klein, and I'd like to share a few of the thoughts I have about Phyllis out of many. But first, I'd like to say thank you to Mimi and you all for including me in this. I've been to this church before, and I find it to be a lovely and peaceful place to be, so thank you. I kind of grew up with Phyllis. We never lived in the same city, but my brother, Lee Stevens, and Mimi got married when Phyllis and I were just turning into teenagers. So we saw a lot of each other over the years. It would probably be an exaggeration to say that I was always tolerant of Phyllis's quirks. We were teenagers, but gradually we kind of mellowed over the years, I think both of us, and I would like to think I matured a little so that we became real friends. And for the past few months when she was in rehab, we had always texted back and forth some, but we got so we were really doing that very regularly, and it was just a really special time for us to connect. Even now, I'll see some especially funny and goofy joke, and usually it's a really stupid pun, and I'll think I've got to share that with Phyllis. Phyllis's abilities, both her musical ability and her ability with language, and with her running, just never failed to amaze me. I always considered myself really good at English, and then I would talk to Phyllis. And I swear I only knew half of the words in the English language that she knew. It was amazing. When they would be visiting us sometimes in Kansas City, we'd go to a favorite Italian restaurant, and she would always enjoy talking in Italian and explaining things to us, how that would work in Italy, or how she could say something in Italian and sometimes to the staff. And it was always an especially fun time. Those of you who knew Phyllis won't be surprised to hear that she never failed to ask about our dogs. She was a true animal lover. What you may not know is that when my other brother, Jack, died suddenly, he had the cat thing going too, and he had rescued 3 formerly feral kittens and died shortly after. So I had to find homes for these kittens. And of course, the first person I thought of was Phyllis, and she and of course Mimi very graciously agreed to take one of the kittens. Now, we had some problems at the vet and with the airlines, but eventually we ended up sending Misty from LA to DC, and she was Phyllis's very best friend for a number of years. It was, and she kind of rescued me on the cat thing. In closing, I would just like to say that I watched Phyllis prosper and bloom under the loving care of her parents, and then for many years after their death with Mimi. It was a lot of responsibility for Mimi, but Phyllis was family. I have the greatest admiration for that family, and I've been honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Cayley, and I'm Katie's partner, and I was welcomed into the family about 20 years ago. I think we've known each other for about 20 years. So this is kind of funny, so I'm going to say it. So we went out to on the memorial walk this afternoon, and I was pushing Katie in a wheelchair, so I have my tennis shoes under the seat chair there, because I didn't think it was appropriate to wear dress shoes. Not to wear dress shoes. And then I was reminded that I probably am in trouble with Phyllis for not wearing my running shoes up here. So anyway, I wanted to say a couple things to the congregation. I don't think there was a conversation that I've had with Mimi and Phyllis over the last 20 years that they didn't mention this church. So there you go for impact, right? Seriously. Every conversation, something about the church. It didn't take me long to recognize how intelligent Phyllis was and also how tolerant she was of people that, like me, that really didn't even have the command of the English language, much less 7 more. It's interesting because I had the word tolerance down as part of the things I wanted to talk about. But we had dogs, and our dogs were all rescue dogs. And every dog that we rescued had behavior problems. So I don't know, maybe we're questionable characters doing that. But anyway, so Phyllis was very tolerant of our dogs who all had behavior problems, right? And the tolerance just improved over time. But I mean, she had a hypersensitivity with hearing, and so you can imagine what dog barking would do, right? And so she just really was tolerant of her dogs, and I always felt bad when she came because they didn't behave any better with guests than they did with us. But, you know, she always would send us a text message, she'd send us an email and ask about her dogs. So that tells you a lot there. Some of my favorite memories was I made contact with Phyllis and Mimi, and I said, we're having a surprise birthday party for Katie. So Katie's a leap year baby, so she only gets a party every 4 years, okay? But they're big ones when we have them. And so I said, this is a secret. You cannot tell her, right? And so they're flying in, of course, from here to Kansas City, and we're coordinating a party for 100 people, right? And it's a secret. All under her nose, which was even funner, right? And so Phyllis was just beside herself, wondering where Mimi and her were going to hide, because they were going to stay with Katie and I until this was disclosed. And so I convinced her that I had a pretty good plan. I called Katie's employer, which was the University of Kansas, and said, you have a workshop today. You need to keep her late. And she said, we'll do that. And so anyway, so when we were at the party, Phyllis kind of taps me, and I mean, this party was, it was a fun party, a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. Phyllis tapped me on the arm, and she said, it worked. And so in 2017, Phyllis and Mimi decided to make a journey out to Kansas City for the eclipse, okay? So you'll have to look it up later. There's a small city that is east of Kansas City called Carrollton, Missouri. And we had a friend who has farmland out there. It was in his family, and they invited him and his brother out to see the eclipse, and that was right in the path of the perfect place. So we drive out in the storm of our lifetimes. It clearly was an inland hurricane in Missouri from the solar, or the effect of the eclipse, and we get out there and we're all going, they've flown in from DC, and I'm thinking, what if this doesn't go, right? And anyway, so about 10 minutes before we were able to view it, the skies parted. We saw the whole thing. And we were surrounded by corn, and I still get goosebumps today. It was a quietness like you'd never have seen or heard again. And so we were pretty pleased with the fact that that went well. We drove back in the same kind of storm. But Phyllis was kind of perplexed about this barn that was out there. I mean, it's just a Midwest thing. When you have a party out like that, or any party, you sign the edge of the barn, or the side of the barn. And Phyllis kept shaking her head. I said, it's okay. They've given us permission to sign the barn. Put your names on here. And so that was, I thought, funny, because the rest of us thought nothing about putting our signature up on somebody's barn. So Phyllis just thought that was a little odd, and quite frankly, it is kind of odd. So anyhow, one of our favorite discussions is, I was a marathoner, Phyllis was a marathoner, so we had a common thread there, right? So other people just kind of leave us alone when we're having these serious discussions, because they're thinking those two people, they're not right? And it's true, we weren't. But so what I learned from Phyllis is that I had a coach, and I got the services for free. I knew soon what the best socks were. Phyllis saved me a lot of money, right? And so I also learned that my laundry skills were inept, and she said, you must turn your running socks inside out and wash them. That's true. They do last longer. And she always would give me tips on activewear, of which shirt she'd done the research to wear. But the thing that I noted about her is her determination. It was like, you know, running a marathon was like no big deal. It was just, you know, like taking a stroll, 1 mile stroll. And I always thought she downplayed that, and that's just, she was humble. She's just a humble person. But I shared a fun fact with her one day, and of course, I'm not going to share facts with Phyllis without researching it, right? Because I know I'll get a text message, a call, and probably an email, and she'll tell her mom too, or tell her sister too. Carrie, there she goes again, wasn't even correct. But anyway, about 1% of people in the United States have run a marathon successfully. 1%, okay? So I would say to Phyllis, you are in the top 1%. You are in the top 1%. She was a very unique person. I have a hole in my heart. It's just, you all understand what I'm saying. And so she is in the top 1% of people I know in life. But I want to say something. I've already acknowledged, I think, the church, but I don't think you guys, I want to say it again, understand the significance of who you are and to this family, because I've never had a conversation that this did not come up. So now I get to be in the church that everybody's talked about all these years, and I understand why people are saying what they've said. But Mimi, you don't need recognition, but I want you to know that we all see it, and I'll tell you, this is the truest of love, how you took care of your sister over the years, right? And I really appreciated what you did with Phyllis, for Phyllis, and it was always done in a respectful manner, right? We didn't, any of us, really focus on Phyllis's differences because there were so few. If there was anything different, it's just because we weren't smart enough to understand, right? So we all focused on Phyllis's strengths. And so I'm honored to be here today with this congregation and your support of this family, and I appreciate having the opportunity to know Phyllis. Thank you.
Please join in singing hymn number 30, Over My Head. Rise as you're willing and able.
Please stand. This is a fun one. Pick a note, any note, because there's lots of harmony in there. 1, 2, 3. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere singing. My head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Trouble over my head. I hear trouble in the air.
So we have some time for congregational sharing of stories, and I'm happy to bring the mic around if anyone would like to share a story about Phyllis. Oh, I hear you, Randy.
Phyllis and I were friends because of Mimi and Elaine. And Phyllis would love to run and walk everywhere. And she had these shirts that would say, I thought they said rum, or what were the shirts say? What was the shirts? I can't remember what the shirts say, but I would love to see the shirts. I thought they said rum, and she used to run a lot and walk a lot. And she loved these shirts, and I wanted to wear them, but I couldn't because they're not cotton. And she looked so wonderful, and she was helpful in everybody's life. She loved everybody, and she was so nice to everybody. And I thought that was special.
Just put your face right up to it, okay? Just speak right into it.
Good afternoon. I'm Randy Merrifield. I knew Phyllis and Mimi for a long time. Last night, my wife, Victoria Valentine, today, reminded me that 10, maybe 12 years ago, she and I attended a function here at the church called Compassionate Choices. We came and we were asked to consider our final moments and the wishes that we might have for our care at that time. And Vicki remembered particularly that Phyllis was there and how interested she was in the whole project. At the end of the evening, they gave us papers for us to fill out so we could write down our wishes for our final moments. Vicki and I never filled out those papers. I guess we're still relying on each other to carry through our wishes. I don't know whether Phyllis ever filled hers out or not, but of course I thought of the absolute emergency of her death, and if she had the immediacy and actually the care that she got in that situation from Jane Nelson, and getting to Alexandria Hospital and being lifted by a helicopter to Fairfax. I think Jane stayed with Mimi the whole time, and she received calls from the cardiologist there at the Fairfax, the best hospital in Virginia. And I think at 12 o'clock, he called Mimi. He said, we're trying to revive her. It's not going very well. Half an hour later or so, he called again, and Mimi said, and he said, it's just not working. Mimi said, well, just let her go. I knew, of course, Mimi and Phyllis in the 80s when I came back here from New York. I went back to New York to a PhD program in the 90s. In 2000, I came back. First thing I did was get involved with AA, got a sponsor. His wife actually had a group, a support group for people with mental health difficulties called DRADA, depression and related affective disorders. He said, you might like to join. I did. Vicki actually had read it in the paper, and she was there the first day. In any case, other thing I did was to renew my lifelong association with this church. And from that day on, I learned to be close, to appreciate Mimi and Phyllis's participation. I thought they were the soul of this church. During the pandemic, Vicki and I dealt with the problems. I did not come to church even when the choir began to return. We were lucky we had neighbors who provided us with extra rolls of toilet paper, and we got our we got our vaccines. I met Mimi and Phyllis at the variety store with a friend of theirs who knew Elaine Peterman from Agape Reservoir. I said to Mimi, "Are you going to church?" And she said, "We're there every Sunday." I said, and she said to me, "Whenever I look through the directory to find somebody's phone number, whenever I come across your picture, I'm very happy to see your face, your smiling face." Anyway, I did come back once Ian was here, and of course I was concerned when Mimi didn't show up several days, and I didn't learn, but I did learn about the terrible accident, and of course I was concerned for the fact that Phyllis had to undergo vertebrae surgery or whatever. Of course, I was grateful to learn that Reverend Ian visited her almost every day. And then, of course, luckily, Phyllis returned to church, and there must be a God somewhere, because I opened my hymnal, and it was dedicated to the Reverend Cyrus and Mrs. Gonigam. I had a few minutes before the start of church. I approached Mimi. She said, "Well, that's our parents." That day, I stood in line to light a candle. Phyllis was looking at me. I gave her a little wave. She waved back. Little did I know that was be the wave for goodbye. The church doesn't have my email address, so I had no advance notice that Phyllis had died. So I was very taken aback that day. And I can't remember the last thing that I wanted. Oh, well, Barbara Bacon was very nice. I cried on her shoulder. But I said to Reverend Ian at that time, all I could think of is that she must be with the angels. So I miss her terribly. Thanks for listening to me for so long.
I just simply, Phyllis, like 4 or 5 years ago, she helped me get home from the church. She would encourage me to give me rides home, and when I needed them. So that's what I remember about her. She was also very fun to talk to. I used to sit over where the snack foods are and talk to her sometimes.
Phyllis and I were running buddies, and I'm not in the 1%, but over the years, we ran many races together. My favorite was the Parkway Classic. Her favorite was the Jingle All the Way, because, of course, for Phyllis, she could dress up, look like a little elf, have little jingle bells, and have a wonderful time with that. But today I'm wearing a running shirt from the St. Patrick's Day run, which is that we ran together. And one of Phyllis's other little favorites was hot cocoa. And she loved, so this was a really cold March day in DC, and we went and had cocoa. And I just have lots and lots of memories of Phyllis, but we ran lots of races together.
I watched her. I saw her as a group. As we joined, she'd look at everyone, hook up with someone, and listen. She listened and connected. She connected with her dancing eyes and glee and fun, or an oops. Or wait a minute, what's happening next? She reached out with kindness. She had fun. She was loving and very caring in little ways. But Mimi, so more than all of us that we could feel her care and love. She loved you endlessly, every day. She loved you so joyfully, always caring for you, loving you. She was blessed to have you in her life, and you each had each other. And I loved her too.
Hi, I'm Byron Peebles, and another way that was interesting was when I finally had kids. I'd already known Phyllis for quite a while, but she was very excited to meet each of my 3 kids, and whenever they came to church, she made a point to talk to them and was asked how they were doing if she hadn't seen them for a few weeks, because they hadn't, wouldn't spend time in the coffee hour always and things like that, and it was always one thing that she made a point to follow up about with us, and that was always appreciative, and I could tell that she really cared a lot, and so that's one of the memories I'll have for her, definitely.
Do we have a burning one left? One left, okay.
I'm sure that for the rest of my life, anytime I hear our covenant spoken in my mind's eye, I'll see Phyllis signing.
Hey, so I'm Tina, and I've been coming to the knitting group for, this year was 4 years. Soph and I started coming right before COVID, and then COVID hit, and then we were doing our meetings via Zoom. And I will say that Phyllis and Mimi always lit up when Soph and I appeared on the Zoom, and they said how excited they were to see us each time. And we would do Zoom from New Jersey, wherever we were, we would attend the meeting. And just a few months ago, last year, Phyllis had this beautiful hat on, and it was really adorable on her. And I said, Phyllis, I said, that hat looks so cute on you. And she said, I said, it's so pretty. And she said, I know. And she said, and I'm like, and she said, I said, did you make it? And she said, no, our mom made it. And I said, well, it is beautiful. And she had a lot of talent. And anyway, she was a beautiful person, and I love to see Phyllis and Mimi. They always sit on the couch during knitting, and they would help each other remember certain stories. And also, Phyllis would always be taking knots out of yarn. And she might spend the whole time at knitting group doing the knot. And I think the other thing I would say is patience about Phyllis, because she would sit there and she was determined, that word again, but patient to get that knot out of this huge ball. Mimi would say that she always got it out if she didn't do it at the meeting. So anyway, she was wonderful.
Anthem. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Listen. Listen for what we have created together. Acknowledge your loss, what is gone from your life because Phyllis is dead. Feel your grief. Do not hold back your tears. They are the rain of your friendship, the salt of your love. Gently hold your compassion, your heartache, to comfort and to share the grief of those who suffer the loss of Phyllis the most. Now let your memories of Phyllis rise from the depths of your mind to say a heartfelt thank you that Phyllis lived, that she touched you, and her life filled your life with her spirit and her deeds. A private thank you that her life filled our world and taught us so much about living. Remember her kindly ways, how she walked and talked with you. Remember her embrace and the touch of her hands. Remember her face, her signature smile. If you feel comfortable, with eyes still closed, reach out and hold the hands of the people sitting next to you. If you don't, it's okay. Just put them on your lap. Each of us has suffered a loss. Each of us grieves. Each of us reaches out to give comfort and to be comforted in turn. Each of us remembers the woman Phyllis was. Each of us is a piece of a quilt of loss and grief, of memory and love. Our fingers are like stitches binding a single fabric from our many pieces. What can we say about death? It's a mystery, and we do not know what happens to a person when they die. We understand that it is a part of life, that something no one can escape, and it makes us humble, but it also leads us into life. We have the strength to face it because we must. We are adequate for all that life presents us. But we also have strength because we have the support of our family and friends. Our strength is the strength of many. Though death extinguishes a life, it can paradoxically also lead us, like light, into a deeper reality. So as we leave this room, let us leave more tenderly joined together, joined to one another and to life. This is Phyllis's final gift. In her death, we are reminded of how important each of us is to one another. Amen. For those of you who are visiting, you can just rest and enjoy these words as they wash over you. Oh, was there a piece? Yep, we're going to do it right now. Just let these words wash over you. These are words that the people of this congregation know well. We're going to recite the extinguishing of our chalice. Please say it with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. Leave our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for coming. You can join us outside for refreshments.